The desperate alliance, the emergency session of the Stellar Coalition, had never seen such desperation. In the vast circular chamber of the Nexus Station, representatives from 47 different species sat in tense silence. The air recyclers hummed with unusual strain as stressed alien biology filled the room with the scent of fear. At the center podium, Council Prime Zelthor's arms trembled as he activated the holographic display. The projection showed a map of the galaxy's outer rim, painted in the blood-red markers of Vex hegemony conquest. World after world had fallen in the past 6 months. Entire civilizations reduced to ash and memory. The Vex didn't just conquer territory, they consumed it, stripping planets bare before moving on like a plague of metallic locusts. Honored representatives, Zeltha's voice carried the weight of impending doom. We face extinction. Our combined fleets have fallen back 17 sectors. The Kepler defense line is our last hope, and intelligence reports suggest the Vex will break through within days. A Killian delegate raised her crystalline hand, her voice chiming like broken glass. What of the Terran response? Surely Earth will honor their alliance obligations. All eyes turned to the human section of the chamber, where Ambassador Elena Torres sat with seemingly impossible calm. She was a small woman by human standards, barely 5 feet tall, with graying hair pulled back in a simple bun. Her dark eyes held secrets that made even the galaxy's most experienced diplomats nervous. Elena stood slowly, her movements deliberate. When she spoke, her voice was soft but carried clearly through the chamber's acoustics. Earth has reviewed the situation. We understand the gravity of the threat the Vex hegemony represents, not just to the Coalition, but to all free civilizations. Hope flickered across dozens of alien faces. The Xerillian Trade Minister leaned forward, his tentacles writhing with anticipation. Then Earth will deploy its full military might. Your legendary fleets, Elena's expression remained neutral. Earth will send what we can spare. Task Force Alpha will depart within 12 hours to reinforce the Kepler defense line. The chamber erupted in a mixture of relief and confusion. Council Prime Zeltha's mandibles clicked anxiously. Task Force Alpha, Ambassador Torres, with respect. We need Earth's entire naval force. Intelligence suggests the Vex are bringing everything they have to this battle. Task Force Alpha is what Earth can contribute at this time, Elena replied, her tone brooking no argument. 50 ships under the command of Captain Maria Santos. They are ... adequate for the task. 50 ships. The number fell like a stone into still water. The assembled delegates had hoped for hundreds, maybe thousands. Humanity's reputation for military prowess was well known, but 50 ships against the Vex war machine seemed insufficient. 3 days later, at the edge of the Kepler system, the defense fleet waited. 200 coalition warships formed a desperate line between the Vex armada and the inhabited worlds beyond. Ships from dozens of species, all that remained of their once mighty fleets, prepared for what many believed would be their final battle. Commander Yurix of the Altarian Navy stood on his bridge, watching the sensor displays with growing dread. Vex fleet composition, he asked his tactical officer. 800 confirmed contacts, sir. Dreadnoughts, battlecruisers, and carrier groups. They're moving in perfect formation, like a machine. YRIX's scaled face tightened. Where were the humans? Task Force Alpha was supposed to have arrived hours ago. Had Earth abandoned them at the last moment? The thought made his stomach acids churn. Then space shimmered. 50 ships materialized out of hyperspace with precision that made the coalition officers gasp. These weren't the bulky, ornate vessels favored by most galactic navies. The human ships were sleek, angular, and painted in matte black that seemed to absorb starlight. They moved with mechanical precision, taking formation positions without a single wasted movement. Captain Maria Santos appeared on every coalition ship's communication screen simultaneously. She was young for a ship commander, perhaps 30, standard years, with short auburn hair and steel-grey eyes that missed nothing. When she spoke, there was no doubt she was in complete control. Coalition forces, this is Captain Santos of Task Force Alpha. We are assuming tactical command of the defense operation. All ships will follow human fleet protocols until further notice. Commander Yerkes felt his ridge scales bristle. Captain Santos, while we appreciate Earth's assistance, the coalition fleet outnumbers your force 4-1. Perhaps a joint command structure would be more appropriate. Santos' smile was thin and sharp. Commander, you've been retreating for 6 months. We've been studying your tactical reports. With respect, your command structure is part of the problem. Task Force Alpha will handle the Vex. Coalition forces will provide support as directed. Before Yerkes could protest, his sensor officer called out urgently. Vex fleet is dropping out of hyperspace. Contact count is increasing. Sir, there are over 1,000 ships. The Vex hegemony fleet was a nightmare given form. Their ships were organic-looking, monsters of metal and energy, bristling, with weapons that could crack worlds. At their head, the flagship Devourer stretched nearly 10 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull pulsing with bioluminescent veins that carried power to weapons capable of sterilizing entire systems. General Crix, Supreme Commander of the Vex Invasion Force, observed the pathetic defense fleet through his ship's neural interface. The coalition ships were arranged in standard defensive formations, predictable and weak. But these new vessels, these human ships, they moved differently. Their formation was loose, almost casual, as if they weren't concerned about the overwhelming odds analysis of the human vessels. Crix demanded, his voice a grating synthesis of biological and mechanical sounds. His tactical coordinator, a Vex officer whose original species was long forgotten after cybernetic conversion, replied with mechanical precision. 50 vessels of unknown configuration. Energy signatures are ... unusual. They appear to be using some form of containment technology we haven't encountered. 50 ships, Crix mused. The humans send 50 ships against our 1,000. Either they are supremely confident or utterly foolish. Begin the attack. Target the human vessels first. I want to see what Earth considers adequate for this battle. The Vex fleet surged forward like a tide of destruction, their weapons charged with energy that made space itself ripple. Massive plasma cannons prepared to unleash devastation that had ended countless civilizations. Then the humans opened fire. What happened next would be studied by military tacticians for generations. The human weapons didn't look impressive. Small projectiles, barely visible to sensors, launched from seemingly insignificant gun ports. But when they struck Vex ships, the results were catastrophic. The projectiles didn't explode. They simply punched through shields, armor, and hulls as if they weren't there, leaving perfectly round holes that vented atmosphere and critical systems into space. Captain Santos stood on her bridge, watching the tactical display with the calm of someone reading a weather report. Target the carrier groups first, she ordered. Disable their strike craft capability. then work our way up to the heavy units. Her weapons officer, Lieutenant Commander Jackson Park, nodded and relayed firing solutions to the fleet. All ships implement pattern Delta 7. Remember, this is a training exercise. Keep your accuracy ratings above 90%. Training exercise. The words were transmitted on open frequencies, heard by every coalition ship in the area. Commander Urix stared at his communication screen in disbelief. The humans were treating this desperate last stand as a training exercise. The Vex pressed, their attack launching wave after wave of fighters and missiles. But the human defensive fire was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Point defense systems tracked and eliminated incoming threats with mechanical precision. Not a single human ship took damage in the first 20 minutes of combat. General Crix watched his carefully planned assault disintegrate in real time. His carriers were already dead in space, their launch bays venting frozen atmosphere. His battle line was being systematically dismantled by impossibly accurate fire. "What are those weapons?" he demanded. "Unknown, General. Analysis suggests some form of kinetic penetrator, but the velocity and mass readings are impossible. They're moving at significant fractions of light speed. Impossible. No projectile can maintain coherence at those velocities without massive energy expenditure. Where are they getting the power?" That question would haunt Vex intelligence for the brief remainder of their empire's existence. The truth was elegant in its simplicity. Humans had learned to manipulate matter at the quantum level, creating projectiles that existed in a state of controlled probability. They were simultaneously incredibly massive and nearly massless, allowing them to achieve impossible velocities, while remaining stable enough to penetrate any known defense. The battle lasted 93 minutes. When it ended, the Vex hegemony's invasion fleet was scattered debris drifting in the cold vacuum of space. Not a single human ship had been destroyed. Several bore scorch marks from near misses, but Task Force Alpha remained combat effective. The Coalition fleet hung in space, their crews stunned into silence. They had witnessed the impossible. 50 human ships had annihilated a force that had conquered half the galaxy. It wasn't just the technology, though that was clearly superior. It was the way the humans fought, with cold precision and absolute confidence, as if they had never doubted the outcome. Council Prime Zelthor's voice crackled over the general communication frequency, filled with awe and gratitude. "Captain Santos, on behalf of the Stellar Coalition, I must express our profound gratitude. Earth has saved us all." Santos appeared on screen again, and for the first time since the battle began, she looked slightly uncomfortable. Council Prime, Task Force Alpha was happy to assist. "We're returning to Earth for debriefing and ... evaluation. Evaluation." Commander Yerkes couldn't help himself. "Captain, your performance was flawless. What could possibly require evaluation?" Santos hesitated, choosing her words carefully. This was Task Force Alpha's first real combat deployment. Their recent graduates from the Naval Academy, Command will want to review their performance and determine if they're ready for more challenging assignments. The silence that followed was profound. Recent graduates, Academy students, the humans had sent their newest, least experienced personnel to face the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known. And those students had won a victory so complete it redefined what was possible in space combat. As Task Force Alpha jumped back to hyperspace, leaving behind a field of Vex wreckage and a coalition of aliens struggling to comprehend what they had witnessed. 1. Thought echoed through every mind in the surviving fleet. If this was what Earth's students could accomplish, what could their actual military do? The revelation, the victory celebration on Nexus Station lasted 3 days. Representatives from across the Stellar Coalition gathered to honor Task Force Alpha's triumph over the Vex hegemony, streets filled with beings from 100 worlds, all raising their various appendages in salute to Earth's heroic intervention. The humans, they declared, had saved galactic civilization itself. Ambassador Elena Torres stood at the window of her diplomatic suite, watching the festivities below with an expression that might have been amusement. Her aide, a young man named David Chen, approached with a stack of communication requests. Ambassador, we have 17 requests for formal alliances, 23 trade agreements, and 49 requests for human military advisors. The Altarians want to name their next colony ship after Captain Santos. Elena sighed. Decline them all politely. Tell them Earth is considering our expanded role in galactic affairs. David frowned. Ma'am, with respect, wouldn't now be the perfect time to solidify Earth's position? The Coalition is grateful, and our reputation has never been higher. Elena turned from the window, her dark eyes serious. What do you know about Task Force Alpha's actual mission parameters? Standard patrol and training crews, ma'am. They were supposed to run navigation exercises in the outer systems when the Coalition emergency came up. Exactly, training crews. Captain Santos and her crews weren't even supposed to encounter live fire. Command was very unhappy about the whole situation. David's confusion was evident. But they won a complete victory against impossible odds.
Yes.
They did, which is exactly the problem. Before David could ask what she meant, both their personal communicators chimed with an emergency frequency. Elena's face went pale as she read the message. Get me a secure channel to Earth Command. Priority, Alpha. 24 hours later, the celebration on Nexus Station came to an abrupt end. Emergency klaxons wailed across the station as every sensor array in the system screamed warnings. The Vex hegemony had returned, and they had brought everything. They had. The hyperspace ruptures began at the edge of the system, space tearing apart as thousands of ships emerged from the void. But these weren't the organic monstrosities of the previous Vex fleet. These ships were different, larger, more angular, with hull configurations that hurt to look at directly. They moved with purpose that made even seasoned military officers nervous. Council Prime Zelthor's emergency announcement echoed through the station's corridors. All Coalition forces to battle stations. The Vex have returned with what our sensors indicate is their entire military force. Over 10,000 ships, of unknown configuration. In the Coalition Fleet Command Center, panic was setting in. Admiral Vorth of the Draconian Navy stared at the tactical display with growing horror. Where is Task Force Alpha? We need the humans here immediately. Commander Yix, recently promoted after his observations during the previous battle, shook his head. They returned to Earth after the battle. It would take them days to return, and by then we're dead, Admiral Vorth finished. 10,000 ships. Even with our entire remaining fleet, we have maybe 300 operational vessels. On the leading edge of the Vex formation, General Crix stood in the command center of his new flagship, World Ender. His form had been extensively modified since his defeat. His organic components replaced with advanced combat systems that made him more machine than living being. The humiliation of losing to 50 human ships had driven him to desperate measures. Status of the human fleet. He demanded no human vessels detected in the system General? Only coalition forces, and they appear to be in full retreat. Crix's mechanical laugh echoed through the bridge. They sent their champions away, believing one victory would secure their future. Fools. Begin planetary bombardment. I want every world in this system reduced to ash before we move on to their precious Earth. The Vex fleet spread out like a cancer, their massive ships taking positions around every inhabited world in the system. Bombardment arrays charged with enough power to crack continental plates. This wouldn't be conquest, it would be extermination. Then Ambassador Alina Torres appeared on every screen in the system, her transmission somehow overriding both Coalition and Vex communication frequencies. She sat in what appeared to be a simple office, her hands folded on a desk, looking more like a bureaucrat than humanity's representative in a galactic crisis. "General Crix," she said, addressing the Vex commander directly, "you seem to have made a fundamental error in your calculations." Crix's augmented features twisted in rage. "Human, your champions are gone. Your pathetic coalition allies cower before our might. Surrender now, and I will ensure your deaths are quick." Smile was small and cold. "General, you're operating under a significant misunderstanding about the nature of Task Force Alpha's previous deployment. They destroyed our invasion fleet. Yes, they did. And they did it very well, which is why Command was so annoyed with me for approving their deployment." General Crix paused, processing this unexpected response. "Annoyed? Your military command was annoyed with victory." "Oh yes." Alina leaned back in her chair. "You see, Task Force Alpha wasn't supposed to engage in combat at all. They were on a training cruise. Fresh academy graduates getting their first taste of deep space operations. Captain Santos had explicit orders to avoid any situation that might result in actual fighting. The silence that followed was filled with the hum of 10,000 Vex. Ships maintaining combat positions. Alina continued, her voice conversational, as if discussing the weather. "The problem is, when Academy cadets engage in unauthorized combat operations, even if they win, it creates a terrible precedent. What if they had lost? What if some of those kids had died because I authorized them to fight instead of waiting for proper military support?" "You're saying?" General Crix's voice carried a note of uncertainty that hadn't been there before. "I'm saying that Task Force Alpha represented the absolute minimum force Earth felt was necessary to handle your invasion fleet. They weren't our best. They weren't our most experienced. They were students on their first field trip." Alina stood and walked to what appeared to be a window, though those watching realized they could see stars moving past at impossible speeds. She wasn't on a planet or station. She was on a ship. Earth's command was quite clear in their displeasure with the situation. They felt that sending Academy cadets to handle galactic security was inappropriate and potentially dangerous. So they're sending proper military units to clean up the mess. The space around Nexus Station began to change. It started as a subtle distortion, like heat shimmer, but quickly intensified. Reality itself seemed to bend as massive shapes began emerging from hyperspace, not the controlled, precise jumps of normal fleet movements, but something far more dramatic. The first ship to fully materialize was larger than anything the Vex had brought. The hull stretched 20 kilometers from bow to stern, a sleek predator of black metal and contained lightning. It was followed by another, then another, until space around the station filled with vessels that dwarfed even the largest Vex dreadnoughts. Admiral Chenwei appeared on the communication frequencies, his image replacing Elena's. He was an older man, perhaps 60, with grey hair and eyes that had seen things most beings couldn't imagine. His uniform bore decorations from conflicts across the galaxy, and when he spoke, there was no doubt he commanded absolute power. "This is Admiral Chenwei of the Earth Defense Force. I am authorized to inform all hostile forces in this system that you are in violation of multiple interstellar treaties and are interfering with Earth's military training operations." The Vex fleet, which had seemed so overwhelming moments before, suddenly looked small and fragile compared to the human vessels surrounding them. General Crix counted the ships on his tactical display with growing disbelief. There were hundreds of them, each one larger and more advanced than anything in his fleet. "This is impossible," he whispered. "Your species doesn't have this kind of military capability. Our intelligence clearly indicated ... double quotes. Admiral Chun's laugh was not pleasant. "General, your intelligence was based on what we allowed you to see. Earth maintains a policy of defensive ambiguity. We prefer that potential threats underestimate our capabilities. But the previous battle was handled by Academy students using training equipment. What you're looking at now is a single operational fleet from Earth's Defense Force. We maintain 12 such fleets, plus specialized units for various ... contingencies." The number hit General Crix like a physical blow. 12 fleets, each one containing hundreds of ships that could annihilate his entire force. His perfect revenge had become a trap, and he had brought the full might of the Vex hegemony directly into the jaws of a predator beyond his comprehension. Admiral Chen's voice carried across all frequencies, calm and implacable. "General Crix, you have two options. Surrender your forces immediately and submit to coalition justice for your war crimes, or continue your aggressive posture and face the consequences. And if I choose to fight?" Chun's smile was cold as the void between stars. "Then you'll discover why Earth has maintained galactic peace for the past century, not through diplomacy, but through overwhelming superiority. Every species that has threatened interstellar stability has learned the same lesson. The question is whether you'll survive long enough to remember it." The Vex fleet began to move, not in attack formation, but retreat. General Crix, faced with impossible odds, chose survival over honor. But Admiral Chen had anticipated this response. "I'm afraid retreat isn't an option, General. You brought war to innocent worlds. You attempted genocide against coalition species. Earth Command has classified your forces as a continuing threat to galactic stability. What followed wasn't a battle, it was a demonstration." The Earth Defense Fleet moved with mechanical precision, their weapon systems engaging Vex targets with surgical accuracy. But instead of the quick, clean kills task force Alpha had delivered, the Defense Fleet took their time. Each Vex ship was systematically disabled, its weapons destroyed, its engines crippled, its crew captured. Within 6 hours, the entire Vex hegemony military force was neutralized. Not destroyed, but completely helpless, their ships reduced to drifting hulks awaiting salvage operations. It was a display of power so overwhelming that every military analyst in the coalition would spend years trying to understand how it was possible. As the cleanup operations began, Ambassador Alina Torres reappeared on coalition frequencies. She was back in her diplomatic suite on Nexus Station, looking as calm and composed as ever. "Council Prime Zelthor, Earth apologizes for the confusion. Regarding our military capabilities, we prefer to maintain a low profile in galactic affairs, but recent events have made that position difficult to maintain." Council Prime Zelthor, still struggling to process what he had witnessed, managed to respond. Ambassador Torres, on behalf of the coalition, I must ask, how long has Earth possessed this level of military capability? Elena's smile was enigmatic. Council Prime, Earth has been a spacefaring civilization for over 2 centuries. We've had time to prepare for various contingencies. The galaxy is a dangerous place, after all. But why hide it? Why let other species believe you were just another member of the coalition? Because power without restraint breeds fear, and fear breeds conflict. Earth learned long ago that sometimes the most effective weapon is the one your enemies don't know you have. The Vex hegemony is proof of that principle. As the coalition fleet began returning to their home systems, carrying stories that would become legend, Elena stood once again at her window. David Chen approached with a new stack of communication requests, but this time his expression was different. He had been present for Admiral Chen's briefing on Earth's actual military capabilities, and the knowledge had changed him. Ambassador, the Coalition Council is requesting a full strategic briefing on Earth's military structure. They want to recalibrate their relationship with humanity. Elena nodded. Schedule it for next week, and David, make sure they understand that what they saw today was just one fleet. We wouldn't want them to think we were showing off. As news of the battles spread across the galaxy, one truth became clear to every civilization capable of space travel. Humanity had been holding back. For decades, they had maintained the pretense of being just another coalition member, when in reality they possessed the power to dominate the entire galaxy. The fact that they chose not to use that power made them either the most benevolent species in known space, or the most terrifying. The galaxy would spend years debating which interpretation was correct. But one thing was certain: no one would ever again make the mistake of underestimating what Earth was capable of when properly motivated. In the end, the Vex hegemony's greatest victory was also their ultimate defeat. They had forced humanity to reveal their true strength, and in doing so, had changed the balance of galactic power forever. The age of pretending Earth was just another coalition member was over. The age of human hegemony had begun.